The strangest phone call of my life came on a Tuesday night at 9:17 p.m. I remember the exact time because the old wall clock in my kitchen ticked so loud between every word the woman said that it felt like a hammer in my skull. "Mr. Haynes," she asked, "are you aware that you are currently under an emergency guardianship order and that you are not allowed to leave the country?" My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. Meatloaf, peas, mashed potatoes. Simple dinner, simple night, TV humming softly in the living room. I stared at the faded yellow paint on my kitchen wall, wondering if I'd misheard her. "I'm in Ohio," I said. "I haven't left town in weeks." On the other end, papers rustled, keys clicked. The woman's voice hardened. "Sir, according to the tracking records submitted to the court and the log from your safety device, your vehicle crossed into Canada 3 hours ago. That's a violation. We have a hearing scheduled for tomorrow morning." My heart thudded so hard it hurt. Canada, 3 hours ago. Thing is, my car was in the garage. Because 3 days earlier I'd found something under it. A small black box with a blinking light. A GPS tracker. Neatly mounted, professionally installed. And instead of ripping it off and throwing it away, I did something a little crazier. I mailed that tracker to Canada. So when this woman told me I had violated an order I never knew existed, by crossing a border I hadn't been near, I understood two things at once. One, someone was lying to a judge about me. Two, whoever put that tracker on my car had just stepped into their own trap. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before I tell you who betrayed me and what they tried to steal, I want to ask you something. Where are you watching this from right now, and what time is it where you are? I'm serious, type it in the comments. Because when you hear how my own family tried to erase me using a little blinking box and some paperwork, you'll realize something. This could happen to anyone, even to an old man who thought he'd seen everything. My name is Walter Haynes. I'm 72 years old. Retired electrician, Vietnam-era veteran, widower. I live in a small town in Ohio, the kind of place where the grocery store cashier knows what brand of coffee you buy and your pastor knows when you're limping a little worse than usual. I've lived in the same modest brick house for 43 years. Same cracked driveway, same maple tree out front, same narrow garage that barely fits my '98 Buick. My wife, June, picked this place when we were 29 and 27. "It has a soul," she'd said, running her hand over the old door frames. She was right. June's been gone 7 years now, cancer. The house sounds different without her laughter in it, but I still hear her sometimes in the clink of dishes, the squeak of that one step on the stairs, the soft whir of the ceiling fan at night. We had one daughter together. Her name is Megan. Megan's 39 now, married to a man named Kyle. They live 20 minutes away in a newer part of town where the lawns all look like they're copy-pasted out of a catalog. They have 2 kids, my grandsons Noah and Liam. Those boys are the reason I still get up early and stretch out these old knees. I want to see as much of their lives as I can. People look at me and see the usual old man package: white hair, slow walk, hearing aids. They don't see the years spent climbing ladders, fixing panels, tracing wires through old hospital ceilings. They don't see the long nights with June at the kitchen table, budgeting every dollar so we could pay off this house and retire without owing anyone anything. That house is my pride. No mortgage, no loans, just taxes and utilities, thank God. I'm not rich, but between my pension, Social Security, and the savings June and I built, I'm okay, comfortable in a simple way. Maybe that's why the vultures started circling. I don't mean strangers, those I could have handled. I mean people with my blood in their veins. People I trusted. If you're listening to this thinking, my kids or their spouses would never do something like that, that's exactly what I used to think. Right up until the day I slid under my car for a routine oil change and felt that little black box with my fingertips. A box that would lead me to courtrooms, lies, and a truth so ugly it still makes my hands shake. My days used to be simple. Mornings started with the sound of the coffee maker sputtering to life and the radio mumbling the local news. I'd stand at the kitchen window, mug in hand, watching the light hit the maple tree just right. On good days, Noah's school bus passed by and he'd press his face against the glass looking for my wave. My routine kept me sane. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, walk around the block, stretch in the living room, check my blood pressure. Tuesday and Thursday, grocery store, post office, chat with whoever was working the counter. Saturdays, those were garage days. Tools on the workbench, old country songs on a dusty radio, the smell of motor oil and sawdust. The Buick was my baby. Not shiny or fancy, but reliable. I'd changed every filter, every belt, every plug. That car had carried my wife to chemo, my daughter to high school, my grandsons to the park. I took care of it because it took care of us. Family dinners were our little tradition. Sunday evenings, Megan would bring a casserole or I'd make my chili, and we'd all squeeze around the same wooden table June picked out in 1983. The boys would race their toy cars across the grooves in the wood, Kyle would talk about his job at the insurance office, and Megan would tell me what the kids were learning at school. Dad, you really should let Kyle help you with your paperwork, she'd say sometimes. He knows all that online stuff, bills, banking, insurance. It's safer if someone younger keeps an eye on it. I'd shrug. I've been paying bills since your diapers needed changing, I'd say with a half smile. But I'll holler if I get lost. We'd laugh, but there was always something behind her eyes. Worry, pressure, I couldn't tell. Little by little, things started changing. Kyle would stay late after dinner, sitting at my kitchen table with his laptop open, asking casual questions that weren't really casual. What's your current policy amount again, Walt? Just curious. A lot of seniors are underinsured. Who's your primary beneficiary these days? Do you have anyone listed as power of attorney in case you know something happens? He always said it with a little laugh like it was a joke, but his eyes didn't laugh. He started bringing forms, just some standard updates, he'd say. It's easier if I pre-fill them, you just sign, saves you the headache. I pushed back on most of them. Years as an electrician taught me to read the fine print before flipping the switch. Still, part of me was flattered. Part of me thought he's looking out for me. But another part of me, a smaller, quieter part, felt something else. A faint little hum of unease, like a loose wire behind a wall. I didn't know it yet, but my quiet, predictable life was already full of cracks. And one October morning in my garage, something slipped through those cracks and landed right in my hand. It was a Saturday, the kind of crisp Ohio morning where your breath fogs in the garage and the concrete floor bites through your socks. I'd backed the Buick halfway out, set the parking brake, rolled my old creeper under the chassis, and slid underneath with a wrench in one hand and a flashlight in the other. I'd done that same motion hundreds of times over the years. But this time, my knuckles brushed something that didn't belong. Not metal frames, not oil pan, not anything I recognized. I froze. My fingertips moved slowly back over the undercarriage, feeling for that out-of-place shape. There, on the inside of the frame rail, nestled neat as a tick in a dog's fur. I brought the flashlight up. The beam hit a black rectangle about the size of a deck of cards. Smooth casing, no rust, no dirt. A tiny LED pulsed a soft, steady green. I just stared at it, the way you stare at a shadow in your bedroom at night, trying to decide if it's a coat on a chair or something worse. At first, my brain tried to make it harmless. Maybe it's part of the emission system, I thought. Then no, I've crawled under this car 300 times. That thing wasn't there last month. Every instinct I had, every old electrician's sense of danger lit up. This wasn't factory, this was installed. Intentionally. By someone who knew what they were doing. I didn't rip it off. Instincts again. You don't yank a strange object loose from an active system before you understand what it is. I took a deep breath, slid out from under the car, and just lay there on my back for a moment, staring at the garage ceiling. The fluorescent light hummed softly above me. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. Part of me wanted to pretend I'd imagined it, that I was just an old man getting jumpy. Another part of me, the part that had survived war, raised a family, buried a wife, knew better. I grabbed my phone, rolled back under, and started taking pictures, close-ups, side angles, zoomed in on the little manufacturer logo stamped into the plastic. When I held my fingers against it, the casing was faintly warm. I unscrewed it carefully, using a rag to avoid leaving prints, and felt the strong pull of magnets release with a soft click. In my hand, it suddenly felt heavier than it had looked, like it was carrying more than circuits and wires. GPS tracker, I said out loud, alone in that cold garage, saying it made it real. But the real question wasn't what it was. It was who. Who thought an old man needed to be tracked? For what? My mind went through the only people who'd had recent access to my car. The mechanic I visited twice a year, maybe, but why? The kid at the tire place, doubtful. Kyle. I pushed that thought away so fast it made my chest hurt. No, family doesn't sneak devices under your car. Right. I sat there on the edge of my workbench stool, the tracker in one hand, my phone in the other, June's old coffee mug in front of me, cold and forgotten. Then a different part of my brain kicked in. The part that fixed problems for 40+ years. Don't panic, Walt. Test first. Observe, collect evidence. Don't confront anyone until you know what you're dealing with. I wrapped the tracker in a paper towel, then in a plastic sandwich bag. My heart was racing, but my hands were steady. Somebody wanted to watch everywhere my car went. Fine. I'd give them a show, just not the one they were expecting. The idea came to me standing in line at the post office. There was an older man in front of me mailing a package to his grandson in Toronto. I heard him say it to the clerk. Canada, she asked, stamping the label. That word stuck in my mind like a tack in a shoe. Canada? We're about 4 hours from the border if you drive straight north. Whoever put that tracker under my car, they were expecting to see my daily little loops around town, maybe an occasional trip to the VA clinic or the grocery store. Data, patterns. If they took the trouble to install professional-grade hardware, they weren't just paranoid. They had a plan. I didn't know what that plan was yet, but I knew one thing. Data can be faked. When it was my turn, I stepped up to the counter with a small cardboard box in my hands. "Morning, Walt," the clerk Denise said. "What are we shipping?" "Just a gadget for my friend's grandson," I said. "He's up near Windsor." I'd written the address from a business card I still had in my wallet, a truck driver named Earl I'd met at the VA years ago. He lived across the border now. We hadn't talked in a while, but I knew one thing about Earl. He didn't ask many questions. Inside the box, wrapped in bubble wrap and an old dish towel, sat the tracker. "No return address, no note. Priority International," I said. "However fast you can get it there." Denise typed Wade printed. "3 days give or take," she said. I paid in cash. Walking back to my car, my heart pounded so loud it felt like people could hear it through my jacket. I kept expecting someone to shout, "Hey old man, what's in the box?" But nobody cared. The world went on. Kids drank pumpkin lattes, a dog peed on a tree. At home, I parked the Buick in the garage and shut the door. Then I waited. Sunday, nothing happened. Monday, I went about my day with that jittery, half-sick feeling you get when you're waiting for test results. My car didn't move, not an inch. I walked to the corner store just to make sure whoever was watching wouldn't see any vehicle movement on their end. Around noon, Megan called. "Hey Dad, everything okay?" "Fine," I said too quickly. She hesitated. "You sound funny." "Just tired, old bones." "Okay, call me if you need anything, all right. Kyle can come over and..." "I'm fine, Megs, love you." I hung up and stared at the phone. I didn't sleep much that night. Every little noise made me sit upright in bed. Headlights sweeping across the ceiling sent my hand reaching instinctively for the bat I kept by the nightstand. Tuesday morning, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Delivered. That was it, one word. Zerl. The tracker was in Canada now. Whoever had been watching my car's movements was seeing something impossible on their screen. A 72-year-old man, supposedly asleep in his little Ohio house, whose car had just left the country without him. I didn't know what that would trigger. Curiosity, panic, phone calls. I just knew one thing. Whichever reaction they had would tell me a lot about why they'd been tracking me in the first place. And that's exactly what happened. Except the first call wasn't the one that scared me. It was the second. The first call came at 3:14 p.m. I was in the living room, half watching an old western, when my cell phone lit up with Megan's name. I answered on the first ring. "Hey, kiddo." "Dad," she blurted, her voice high and breathless. "Where are you right now?" I looked around at the familiar living room. June's faded curtains, the old recliner, the TV glow. "Oh, my couch." "No, seriously," her voice shook. "Are you okay? Did you go on a trip or something?" "No," I said slowly. "What's going on, Meg?" I heard muffled talking in the background, Kyle's voice low and sharp. Megan's breath hitched. "Kyle says," she stopped. "Never mind, I'll call you back." Click. I just sat there, phone against my ear, listening to the dial tone. The western played on. Horses ran across dusty plain. Something felt very, very wrong. That night the house felt too quiet. I ate leftover meatloaf standing at the kitchen counter, then wandered from room to room like I'd misplaced something. But what I'd misplaced was a feeling I'd always taken for granted, that my life was boring and therefore safe. Around midnight, I gave up on sleep. The laptop on my desk glowed softly when I opened it. The Wi-Fi icon blinked. When Kyle had set up the internet for me last year, he'd insisted on logging into all my accounts to make sure everything was secure. I hadn't thought much of it then. Now my skin crawled just remembering his fingers on my keyboard. I sat there in the dark office, screen lighting up my old hands, and made a list with pen and paper like I used to do at work. Questions. Who installed a tracker? Who benefits from knowing where I go? Why would Canada trip make them panic? I typed the model number from the photos I'd taken into the search bar. Vehicle GPS tracker real-time monitoring, the first result said. I clicked. The manufacturer's page loaded, blue and white and full of happy stock photos. Families, smiling seniors, taglines about peace of mind. Features. Real-time location tracking via smartphone app. Speed alerts. Geofencing. Wandering alerts for seniors with dementia. I sat back. There it was. This wasn't a toy. It wasn't something you'd buy as a joke. This was a tool for control, for building a picture of someone's movements. I clicked a sample use case. A little story popped up about an adult daughter protecting her elderly father by putting a hidden tracker on his car, and then using the logs in court to prove he needed help making decisions. My stomach twisted. Guardianship, the article said, protecting your loved ones even from themselves. I didn't answer, I just stared. Guardianship. That word rolled around in my head like a marble in a metal bowl. Emergency guardianship is what you get when the court decides someone can't manage their own life, their own money, their own choices. Someone else steps in, signs for them, sells things, moves them into facilities for their own good. I knew all that from a guy in my veterans group. His niece had done it to him. He'd lost his house in 6 months. June's voice echoed in my memory. You and I worked too hard for this house, Walt. Don't you ever let someone take it out from under you. I opened a new tab and searched Emergency Guardianship Ohio Tracker Dementia Evidence. It was all there. Articles about adult children using apps, trackers, wandering incidents, to convince courts that mom or dad was no longer safe at home. I read until my eyes burned. At 2:07 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Megan. Dad, can we talk tomorrow? It's important. I typed back, sure, call anytime. I didn't sleep that night. The laptop screen went dark. The house hummed around me. Every creak sounded like footsteps. Every shadow felt like a stranger. In the morning, before Megan could call, a different number lit up my phone. Unknowns, local area codes. I almost let it go to voicemail. I wish I had, because that's when the second call came. The one that told me it was worse than I thought. Mr. Haynes. The voice on the line was female, professional, clipped. Papers shuffled in the background. Yes, I said slowly. This is Karen Blake from the county probate court. I'm calling regarding your emergency guardianship case. I gripped the edge of the kitchen counter. I don't have a case, I said. There was a pause, keyboard clacking. According to our records, your son-in-law Kyle Matthews filed for emergency guardianship over your person and estate 3 weeks ago, citing concerns about your memory, unsafe driving, and wandering behavior. The room tilted. What? Sir, please understand. Her tone softened a little. These things are hard, but your family is just trying to keep you safe. The judge granted a temporary order last week, pending full hearing, and restricted you from driving outside the county until evaluation. We were notified this morning that you've crossed the border into Canada. That's a violation, and I haven't left my house, I said, my voice coming out hoarse. My car is in my garage. I vacuumed it yesterday. I mow my own lawn. I cook my own food. I don't wander. Silence. Mr. Haynes, we have logs submitted from a tracking application that show multiple nighttime trips, grocery store, highway on-ramps, long drives in the past month, episodes of confusion. Mr. Matthews included a statement from your physician. My hand was shaking. My physician, I whispered, Dr. Patel. Oh yes, I knew that was a lie. Dr. Patel had just told me last month my memory looked fine for my age. He'd laughed when I joked about losing my keys more. We'd been seeing each other for years. He wouldn't sign something like that without talking to me. Ma'am, I said, forcing my voice to be steady, who signed as my guardian on that order. Mr. Kyle. I hung up. My heart was hammering against my ribs. My whole body felt hot and cold all at once. Emergency guardianship. Without my knowledge. Temporary order already granted. A restriction on leaving the county. And the evidence. A GPS tracker I just mailed to Canada. I stumbled into the living room and sat down hard in my recliner. The leather squeaked under my weight. The house buzzed quietly. The world suddenly felt like it was made of paper and someone had just taken a match to it. Kyle had gone to a judge and told them I was incompetent. He'd used my doctor's name. He'd used that tracker's logs. He'd told them I was wandering at night. In a few weeks, if no one challenged it, that temporary guardianship would become permanent. And once that happened, he could sell my house. He could put me in a facility. He could empty my accounts for my care. I could disappear into a room with a plastic mattress and a call button, while my photos, my tools, my wife's dishes, my life, got boxed up and sold. All of it wrapped in words like safety and best interest. Something inside me went very still. I'm not a violent man, never have been, but there's a place past anger, past hurt. A cold, bright place where survival lives. I sat in that place for a long time. Then I stood up, went to my desk, and pulled out a yellow legal pad. On the top, I wrote, plans. Underneath, I wrote 3 names. Dr. Patel, Megan, a lawyer I hadn't called in 15 years. They wanted to erase me quietly. If there's one thing you should know about old electricians, it's this. We don't go quietly. We check every wire, follow every current, and if someone's trying to use our power without permission, we cut them off at the source. The first stop was Dr. Patel's office. The waiting room smelled like disinfectant and coffee. Kids, drawings of hearts and flowers hung on the wall. The receptionist looked up surprised. Mr. Haynes, you don't have an appointment today. I need 5 minutes, I said. It's important. Maybe she saw something in my face. Maybe she just liked me. Either way, she went to the back and came out with Dr. Patel a minute later. He put a hand on my shoulder. Walter, what's wrong? In his office, with the door shut and the blinds half closed against the morning sun, the words came out in a rush. Did you sign anything saying I'm incompetent? I asked. Any letter, any evaluation? His eyebrows shot up. No, he said, of course not. I told him everything, the tracker, the call from the court, the supposed statement from him. He turned to his computer, fingers flying across the keyboard. His jaw clenched. Here, he said after a moment, this is the only thing my office ever sent with your name on it. He turned the monitor toward me. It was a standard health summary, blood pressure, medications, last visit notes. No evaluation, no cognitive assessment, nothing. Whoever submitted that letter, he said, didn't get it from me. He printed the screen, signed the bottom, and wrote in big clear letters, no cognitive impairment diagnosis, no recommendation for guardianship. Signature has been forged if used elsewhere. I folded that page carefully and tucked it into my jacket pocket. That was my first wire traced. The second was harder. I called a lawyer whose name I'd kept in my address book from when my brother died. Estate stuff. His name was Aaron Goldman. His voice sounded older on the phone, but still sharp. What's this about Walter? He asked. My son-in-law filed for guardianship behind my back. I need to see every piece of paper the court has. He sucked in a breath. Come to my office, he said, today. 2 hours later, we were sitting in his cluttered office, file boxes stacked against the walls. He'd already pulled my case from the court system. He slid the thin folder across the desk. Read, he said. I did. The petition said I was forgetting to pay bills, leaving the stove on, getting lost while driving. It said I'd fallen twice without telling anyone. It said I'd shown paranoia about finances and increasing confusion about time and place. At the bottom, Kyle's neat signature. Attached were printouts of GPS logs from the tracker, little lines on maps late at night, routes I'd never driven, trips to the highway at 2 in the morning, turnarounds at off-ramps. There's also this, Aaron said, sliding another page over. A letter on fake letterhead, supposedly from Dr. Patel, full of words like moderate cognitive decline and safety concerns. My hands shook. Can we fight this? I asked. Aaron leaned back in his chair, eyes on me, not the papers. Walter, he said quietly, this is fraud. And if that tracker is where you say it is, we have something better than most clients ever get. Proof they're lying, I asked. Proof, he said, that their evidence is garbage. He tapped the GPS logs. All these late-night trips, the petition claims they're your car. He smiled, a small, grim thing. But if you mailed the tracker out of state before these supposed incidents, then their data doesn't show you driving around at 2 a.m. He looked up at me. It shows a box moving through the postal system. Something in my chest loosened for the first time in days. What do we do? I asked. First, he said, we get the hearing moved up. Second, we make sure Megan hears the truth from you, not from him. And third, he opened a drawer and pulled out a small digital recorder. We give Kyle a chance to tell us in his own words why he did this. The plan was simple. Invite them over. Ask careful questions. Let the man hang himself with his own rope. 3 days later, on a rainy Thursday evening, Megan and Kyle sat on my couch, water dripping off their coats onto June's old rug. My heart pounded so loud I could barely hear the TV's low murmur in the background. I'd put the recorder on a shelf behind some framed photos. The red light blinked softly. Megan's eyes were red-rimmed. Kyle looked tight, defensive, his jaw clenched. Dad, Megan began, why didn't you tell us you were going on a trip? I didn't go on a trip, I said calmly. My car hasn't left the garage in a week. She looked confused, glanced at Kyle. He cleared his throat. Walt, we know that's not true, he said. Look, this doesn't have to be a fight. We're just trying to help. You've been slipping. I watched him, the way his fingers tapped his knee. The way his eyes darted around the room but never landed on mine. Slipping, I repeated. Yeah, he said, you left the store without paying last month. You called Noah Liam 3 times. You forgot the chili on the stove. I turned the burner off before I sat down, Kyle, I said. And I paid for my groceries. I have the receipt. His jaw tightened. This isn't denial, Walt, it's symptoms. Is that why you put a tracker under my car? I asked quietly. Megan's head snapped toward him. Oh, you what? Kyle's face drained of color. That's standard, he said quickly. Lots of families use devices for safety, your doctor agreed. Dr. Patel remembers no such talk, I said. He also didn't write that guardianship letter, the one with his signature. Megan's hand flew to her mouth. Kyle, what is he talking about? He turned on her. I did what you asked me to do, he snapped. You're the one who kept saying you were worried he'd fall, that he'd forget to turn the gas off. I never asked you to forge anything, she cried. I thought you were just getting legal advice. Their voices rose, the rain beat harder against the windows. I let them argue for a minute, let the recorder soak it in. Then I said very softly, Kyle, you went to a judge and told them I was incompetent. You used that tracker's logs as proof. You knew once guardianship was granted, you'd decontrol the house, my accounts, everything. Tell me why. He stared at me, chest heaving. Because you're old, he burst out. Because you could fall and break your hip any day. Because you're sitting on a paid-off property and retirement money while we're drowning in debt and daycare and a mortgage, and you refuse to downsize or move into assisted living. You're hoarding resources you don't even use. Megan turned to him like he'd slapped her. We are not owed his house, she whispered. Kyle kept going, almost wild now. I'm not the bad guy here, Walt. I set things up so that when the state finally agreed you needed care, you'd already be in a safe facility and we'd have some stability. Do you have any idea how much your life insurance is worth? How fast this house would sell? We could. He stopped. The silence was like a thunderclap. Megan stared at him as if seeing him for the first time. You talked to the insurance company, she asked slowly. He looked away. We're done here, I said. I stood up on knees that suddenly didn't feel so shaky. In 2 weeks, there's going to be a hearing. My lawyer will be there, so will Dr. Patel. So will copies of that forged letter and the GPS shipment records showing your evidence crossing the border in a cardboard box. Kyle opened his mouth. And if the prosecutor has any sense, I added, so will the fraud and elder abuse unit. Megan started to cry. Dad, I didn't know, she whispered. I swear, I thought it was just forms, evaluations I never wanted. I know, I said, and I did. I could see it in her face, shock, betrayal, dawning horror. Kyle, I added, turning to him one last time. You tried to take my life away with a few signatures and a tracking app. I nodded toward the doors. Now get out of my house. The hearing came faster than I expected. Courtrooms don't look like they do on TV. Ours was small, beige, tired, a handful of people in wooden benches, a judge with kind eyes behind tired glasses, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. My hands shook when I took the stand, but my voice didn't. We presented everything. Dr. Patel's sworn statement that he'd never recommended guardianship, the forged letter with the sloppy imitation of his signature, the GPS company's log showing the little tracker's journey from Ohio to Canada through the postal system. Earl had even sent a photo of himself holding the device in front of a Canadian road sign, grinning like an idiot. The judge looked at the petition, then at me, then at Kyle. Mr. Matthews, he said, do you understand that falsifying medical documents and misleading this court are serious offenses? Kyle's lawyer tried to spin it as misunderstanding, panic, overwhelmed caregiver. The judge wasn't buying it. Petition for guardianship is denied, he said firmly. Temporary order is revoked. Mr. Haynes retains full control over his person and estate. This court will be referring this matter to the county prosecutor for review of potential fraud and elder exploitation charges. The gavel's soft rap sounded louder than any thunder I'd ever heard. Outside the courthouse, the autumn air felt different, cleaner, sharper, like the world had been out of focus and suddenly snapped clear. Megan stood near the steps, arms wrapped around herself. She looked smaller than I remembered, not in years, but in certainty. Dad, she said, eyes shining, I don't know how to apologize for any of this. I looked at her for a long moment. I thought about the little girl who used to run to me with scraped knees, the teenager who slammed doors, the young woman who cried on my shoulder when Noah was born and she was so scared she'd be a bad mother. I believe you didn't know about the forgery, I said quietly, but I also believe you looked away from things that didn't feel right because you were tired, because it was convenient. Oh, she winced. That's on you, I added gently, not on him. Tears spilled over. I cut him out of the house, she whispered. He's staying with a friend. I don't know what's going to happen with the charges, with the kids, with anything. I'm sorry, I said, and I was, in a different way. Her life had just cracked open, too. Can I still bring the boys by? She asked, voice small. I felt the ache behind my ribs ease just a little. Yes, I said, but we're going to do this slow. And honest, no more secrets, no more forms for me to sign without reading. She nodded, sobbing now. I love you, Dad. I love you too, kiddo. We stood there on the courthouse steps, Two people caught in a storm neither of us had asked for, just trying to find our footing again. Months passed. The prosecutor did file charges. Kyle ended up with probation, mandatory financial counseling, and a record that would make it hard for him to work in insurance again. Some people said he got off easy. Maybe he did. But truthfully, the part of me that had once welcomed him into my family was just tired. I didn't want to spend the years I had left wishing more punishment on anyone. I changed my locks. I met with Aaron and put my house in a trust that made it much harder for anyone to touch without my say. I gave copies of my healthcare wishes to two people I trusted, Megan and my old army buddy Tom, just in case. The tracker company sent me an email advertisement a few weeks later. Worried about your aging parents? It asked, bright and friendly. I marked it as spam. Some nights the house still feels too big, too quiet. The maple tree still drops leaves on my driveway. The Buick still sits in the garage, faithful as ever. But my after-dinner routine is different now. Once a week, I sit at the same kitchen table where June and I used to balance our checkbook, and I talk to other seniors through a support group video call. I tell them to check under their cars. I tell them to read what they sign. I tell them that love does not mean giving someone else the keys to your life without question. A few weeks ago, a man named Robert called me, his voice shaking. I think my daughter's trying to get guardianship, he said. She installed cameras and keeps talking about keeping me safe. I found an app on her phone that shows everywhere I go. I listened. When he finished, I said the same words I wish someone had said to me sooner. You're not crazy, document everything. Get a lawyer, trust your guts. Well, he sniffed. Why are you helping me? Because I thought someone tried to erase me with paperwork and a little blinking box. And I survived. Because I've been where you are, I said. And nobody deserves to feel that alone. If you're still with me, listening to an old man's story at this point, I want you to remember one thing. Blood is important. Family is important. But your right to exist as a person, to make your own choices while you're still able, that's sacred. Self-preservation isn't selfish. It's survival. And sometimes, survival looks like a shaky old man standing in a post office line, mailing a tracker to Canada, and saying quietly to himself, "Not today." If my story hit something in your chest, don't just click away and forget it. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. I really do read those. It reminds me how far these grandpa stories can travel. If you know someone older, maybe a parent, a grandparent, a neighbor, share this video with them. Sit down and ask them if anyone's been asking them to sign things. If they've noticed anything strange, sometimes just one conversation can change everything. And if you've ever faced betrayal from your own family, or had to choose between keeping the peace and protecting yourself, I'd like to hear your story too if you're willing. Hit subscribe if you want more true stories like this, about love, loss, betrayal, and the hard choices we have to make to stay alive and free. Thanks for listening to an old man talk. Take care of yourself, and maybe the next time you walk past your car, just take a quick look underneath.